All right. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I'm just going to give it a few seconds for people to file in here. All right. Looks like we've got plenty of people joining us. Great. All right. So, welcome to everybody. We're so glad you could join us online for this event. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Authors Guild Foundation, which is the charitable and supporting arm of the Authors Guild. The foundation supports and protects working writers, including providing educational resources to help with the business side of being an author. And on that note, today we have Amy Stewart with us to discuss book club strategies for authors. We'll be talking about both online and in-person book clubs. Amy is the author of 6 nonfiction books and 6 novels, and she's held hundreds of book club chats, including hundreds online. And today she's going to be talking about outreach strategies, working with your publisher on investing in book club promotions, and ways for authors to manage the process. If you have any questions for Amy, please look for the Q&A button. It should be at the bottom or side of your Zoom. And we'll get to as many questions as we can toward the end. Also, this video will be made available later at authorsguild.org and on our YouTube. So you can view it and share it with other authors who might have missed it. And also, if you're joining us live, please look for a survey that we will email you tomorrow. It really helps us to get feedback so we can prepare future webinars based around what you want to see from the Authors Guild. And now I will hand it over to Amy for her expertise. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Good to be here. So we got to talking about this idea to do something about book clubs because last week I did this webinar with the Authors Guild on making a book video, and I mentioned that one of the things I use my book videos for is connecting with book clubs. And after we talked about book clubs a little bit, we thought, oh, we should really dive into this. I wrote 6 nonfiction books before I started writing fiction. And as a nonfiction writer, I occasionally heard from book clubs. I did a few little things with book clubs. But as soon as I started writing fiction, I realized, oh, book clubs are going to be a big part of my life now. So I've gotten very into it. I've done over 250 Skype chats with book clubs. And I have a real robust way of working with book clubs. And that's what I'm going to tell you about. So I'll get right into it. So the first thing is, what are we talking about when we talk about book clubs? What I'm talking about are what we probably most of us think of when we think of a book club, which is just a group of friends or neighbors who get together and read books and drink wine, and they've organized themselves informally, and those kind of groups come and go and break apart and reform, and they're very organic and just come out of people's ordinary connections with each other. But another great place where book clubs happen is at libraries, and I do a ton of stuff with libraries, so I'll talk more about that. And there are also book clubs that happen through some other affiliation, like a science museum might have a book club, or of course, bookstores run their own book clubs, and they also serve private book clubs by ordering the books for the book club. There's lots of institutions that have book clubs, even employers. I've talked to book clubs that are run by retirement communities, member associations, like whatever. It could be an association of attorneys, and they could run a book club as one of their member benefits. So there's all those kinds of book clubs that are in some way organized by some sort of institution. And then also there's all the online book clubs. So like Litzy, Litzy is an app. It's kind of like Goodreads combined with Instagram, I guess I would say. And Litzy has a book club. They pick a book every month, and they will do an online chat with the author. Sometimes, you know, I think Book Riot has a book club. I think Wired Magazine does. So there's all these sort of online book clubs where someone is picking the book and kind of announcing it. So when I talk about book clubs, I'm talking about any and all of that. And then I thought I would say a few words about why I think book clubs are important. The obvious, maybe the most obvious thing would be that they buy books. So of course they do. If you're talking to a group of 5 or 10 people in a book club, most of them have either bought the book, or they checked it out from the library, or they downloaded an ebook, or they're listening to the audiobook. So there's the sales, But for me, the most important reason, the thing that really got me focusing on book clubs is that I think the kind of people who join a book club tend to be people who are naturally gregarious, outgoing, joiners of clubs, and probably people who like to talk to their friends about the fun things that they're going and doing with their clubs and their groups and their stuff. We all know people like that. Maybe some of us are people like that. So those are the kind of people who can really help spread the word about your book through word of mouth. Oh, we had this wonderful time at book club last night, and I'm going to tell you about it now. So it's getting those folks into my inner circle as a writer that I'm most excited about. But also, like for me, I'm writing a series, and so I hope that a book club that reads the first book in the series will keep reading. And that's turned out to be true. I've had book clubs that have called me back every year. They've read every book in the series. But another thing is that people I talk to at book clubs will also show up to my events. And later I'll talk to you about how I specifically reach out to them when I do events to invite them to my in-person events. But they also kind of make up my core fans, I think. You know, if you have a chance to have a wonderful interaction that's one-on-one or pretty close to one-on-one with book club members, they'll hopefully become part of your core fan base, or at least some of them will, and subscribe to your newsletter, follow you on social media, spread the word about you, and be people that you have a relationship with year after year. And one of the big reasons why I'm interested in book clubs, though, is it's a great way to connect with librarians. And so if you're talking to a book club at a library, that librarian is going to remember you and keep an eye out for your books when they come out and spread the word about your books in a much broader way. The same is true of bookstore book clubs as well. It's just that I happen to do a lot more with libraries. So that's the what and the why. I want to talk about the where, like how do we find book clubs? How do we connect with book clubs? And for this, I'm going to do a little share screen, and I'm going to show you, hang on. Okay, I'm going to show you some of the main book club websites, which are a place to find them. And if anyone's not seeing my screen, please jump in, let me know if that's a problem, but I'm assuming you can all see this. Reading Group Choices is a great website where book club members can come and find books that they want to select for their book club and sort of organize and connect. And Reading Group Choices does a lot of cool things on Facebook. I just recently did an online chat with them, a Facebook Live kind of thing, and they will feature particular books. And they do offer ways for publishers, or maybe for authors as well, to do a special promotion to their audience. So this is a place where people who want to join a book club might come to find a book club to join or to pick a book to read. There's also a website, and it's also an app. It's a really cool app called Book Movement. And this is, they say they have 35,000 book clubs on their websites. And I've used this one. I joined a book club here in Portland, and this is the website. So this is a way book club members can come and pick a book and talk about it and set up their meeting time and decide on their meeting location and have it all happen within the website. So those are kind of the two big ones. There's this other one called Reading Group Guides, which does have, you know, it's a place where book clubs can come to look for a reading group guide about the particular book that they're interested in. There's one called Reader's Circle, which is also you know, how to find a book club kind of site. And then there's a few others that are smaller that I haven't used much, but I'm just aware of. There's this one called Our Own Book Club. There's another one called Book Clubs with a Z, which is quite similar. It's about finding a book club or creating a book club online and getting recommendations. And then there's lots of things like these subscription things where a book club can sign up and get a subscription box and maybe have books chosen or curated for them. So all of those things are ways that book clubs are finding each other online and finding books to read. All right, that's the end of the share screen for now, but I'm going to come back and show you a few other things in a minute. So hopefully you're seeing me again. Other ways that individual people find book clubs and where you can also perhaps connect with book clubs. Facebook is an obvious one. People, a lot of people form a little book club on Facebook or search for book clubs in their neighborhood on Facebook. Usually it's a Facebook group, not a Facebook page, but a Facebook group. And meetup.com, which is such an old school kind of website, it's still really used, and it is a place where people go to find book clubs in their neighborhood. I found my book club on Nextdoor, so Nextdoor is really becoming a place where people can find a book club to join or form a new book club with their neighbors. And then, like I mentioned before, libraries. Libraries are huge. If you want to join a book club, the easiest possible thing to do is to walk into your local branch library and find out what they're up to. And they're probably running lots of book clubs at the library. And then bookstores, of course. Some bookstores are running clubs within the store, but other bookstores are acting as clearinghouses for book clubs, where they're ordering the books that the club wants. But also, if you want to join a book club, they can sort of put you in touch with some of their customers who are running book clubs. So those are all the ways that people find book clubs, and where you as an author or your publisher can help to connect with book clubs. And so now I want to get into the nitty-gritty of what I do and how I do it, some of which might work for you, some of which might not, but I'll just tell you what I do. The main thing that I've done is I made a page on my website for book clubs, and I'm going to go back into share screen, and I'm going to show you my page. And it's one of the things I did is I created a URL called amystewart.com/bookclubs. That's not the URL that my web page my website sort of generated automatically, but I just created it and it redirects. Because anyone can remember that, amystewart.com/bookclubs. It's short and easy, and so it redirects to this page, which has a somewhat longer URL. This page is getting a little too cluttered and complicated for my taste, so I'm not holding it up to you as the icon of, you know, the perfect way to do it, but it's but here it is. I just want to tell you what my goal is with this page and what happens. So the very first box you see is how to do a Skype with me. I let them know that I'm happy to do Skype or FaceTime or Google Hangouts or even just on the phone. I give a link to email me. And I also just added right here in this top box that if they're not able to work that out and they don't want to Skype chat with me, I do have a video about every book in the series. And I just linked to a YouTube playlist that has all the videos I've made about my books. And maybe the book club would like to just watch a video and get on with their conversation. Maybe they're not interested in talking to me, and that's totally fine. And I also remind them that I do events around the country, and so I send them to my event page as well. So there's that. Another thing I do, because I wrote a book about booze, I wrote a book called The Drunken Botanist, people associate me with cocktails. So I created a cocktail to go with every one of my books, and the recipes are here. And my publisher makes these into cute little PDFs. They're very nicely designed, and you can download them. I threw this in here for an interview I did one time. They wanted me to create a playlist of songs connected to my books. And it just so happens that one of my characters is on the stage, and she's very interested in music. This is the 1910s. And so I do have a Spotify playlist of songs that are either in the books or the kinds of songs they would listen to. It's pretty weird music, but anyway, there's a Spotify playlist of that right there. Book club discussion guides are something that my publisher has made. I don't write these myself. To be perfectly honest, I find book club discussion guide questions annoying. I don't like them. And so they asked me if I wanted to write my own, and I said, no, I hate those things. I understand that they're a necessary evil, and I understand that there are some book club websites that won't let you feature your book there unless you've done a discussion guide. So I get that you have to do it, but I'm not doing it. And so they hire a freelancer who does them, and I just read them over to make sure that they're factually accurate. Because a couple of times the questions have misunderstood something important about the book, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I don't really like those, but they're up here, and my publisher insists on them. What I do like is an Ask the Author Q&A, where I just ask myself questions and then answer them. So I have those up there, and these are the ones I actually like, and I think the book clubs would enjoy reading. So I also do these, and I once again send people to the videos I have if they want to watch that. And also, since I'm writing a series, and since my series is based on real people, I have a page on my website with photographs of the real people that my books are based on, and a little bit of biographical information. And since my books are obviously set in a real place, I have pictures of the real place and some of the newspaper clippings about the events in my books. So there's another page where they can go and look at those pictures. And then this is where it's all getting to be a bit much. I realize this is so much. I really do need to simplify all this. But I give away, I do a lot of book giveaways. So I encourage people to come find me on Facebook, Twitter, Goodreads, Instagram, This top secret Cop Sisters Book Club mailing list is just my newsletter, but I do a giveaway every month in my newsletter. So I encourage people to like do that if they want free stuff. And then, because this just never ends, I get that. My publisher has also made coloring book pages of the cover of each of my books, and people can download those as PDFs. And believe it or not, my publisher also made paper dolls of my characters. And you can download those as PDFs and print them out and cut them out and do whatever you would like to do with them. And book clubs do this stuff. So anyway, I have this whole page. It's a lot, but book clubs thank me for it, and they really seem to appreciate it. I always get a compliment on it. And I have a lot of SEO keyword stuff in the background to make sure that this comes up high in search rankings and people actually find it. So, okay, I will come back from sharing screen for just a second, and we can talk a bit more. So the number one thing that I do is this page on my website. I think it's super important. And then I mention this page in my bio everywhere. So in my author bio that gets printed on the back of my book, the little 2-sentence sort of bio on the back cover, it says, for book club resources, go to amystewart.com/bookclubs. On my Amazon page, where you can upload your own bio on Amazon, it says, for book club resources, go to amystewart.com/bookclubs. It's on Goodreads. Every place that I can possibly put a bio, it's there. Whenever my publisher generates any kind of publicity material, I notice they're very fond of putting their website on publicity material, but going to their website doesn't really give book clubs anything. And so I'm always, anything they send me, I'm always like, let's put amystewart.com/bookclubs on that. I have bookmarks printed up that I hand out at events. It's very prominent on the back of the bookmark, amystewart.com. And when I hand people the bookmark, I'm like, and if you're in a book club, go to that link. So like, I really put it everywhere. Ways to reach book clubs. So my own website, I send out a newsletter once a month. And so if I'm always reminding people, if you're in a book club, come Skype with me. I put that out on social media from time to time. My publisher does paid, my publisher spends money to promote my books to book clubs in a couple of different ways. One would be the kinds of things that a website like Reading Group Choices offers. They have sort of like standard packages to promote to book clubs. And I know they do that. And another thing that we came up with is we came up with this idea to do giveaways of a kind of book club in a box. So in my case, it includes a copy of the first book in the series and some swag. And honestly, most of the swag is stuff that they have printed up. So it's things like the coloring book pages or the cocktail recipes, but it's not a lot of expense for them beyond the expense of a print run of promotional materials. But anyway, they make it look real cute. And what we've done over the years is they have done giveaways on like the Shelf Awareness for Readers email blast that goes out to all the readers who have subscribed to that, or to these book club websites. We'll do an email blast. And I think we've done it with Library Journal. And so basically it's just like, we're having a contest for book clubs. Enter here to win a book club in a box. And in that book club in a box, there's also a little card saying, congratulations, you won a free Skype chat with the author. And of course, anyone can do a Skype chat with me. You don't have to win, but nonetheless, that's what it says. So my publisher has been great about getting all these entries and sending out these boxes. And then I get just a flood of book club requests when those boxes go out. And I think it's been the best use of our marketing dollars, so much so that I've even said in the past, you know, if you have the money to do this, but not the people, I will pack up these boxes from my kitchen table. If you'll ship me the stuff, I will do it. But they've always been willing to do it, which is great. The other thing is that some publishers have sales reps who are out talking to book clubs in ways that even your editor might not know is happening. There's a few generations of people in between your editor and the sales reps who are out in the field. So one thing that happens is that in a few parts of the country, like in Southern California, there are these big sort of annual luncheons for book clubs where the whole book club can come or a few members can come, and they can spend the day hearing about new and upcoming books that they might choose for their book club. And they're really fun events. Sometimes they're ticketed events and the proceeds go to a charity. But I see sales reps from big publishing houses there pitching particular books. Also, a lot of bookstores, even really small bookstores, will have book club night once a year, where they will invite all of the community book clubs to come in and hear about books that the bookstore is particularly excited about as book club picks for the coming year. And I've talked to those bookstore owners, and they get not only great turnout, but they see a lot of sales of that book throughout the year, well beyond the book club, because they featured it and they keep it front and center in the store for the year. And so sales reps often are participating in that in one way or another, either showing up in person at the bookstore or sending a bunch of free giveaways and supporting it in other ways. So those are ways to reach book clubs. Other ways to reach book clubs, of course, are your local library and your local bookstores who are working with book clubs all the time. And I just want to, before we jump into questions, I just want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of how I do what I do. So I'm going to go back to share screen and just show you how I keep all this organized. And then we'll do questions. All right, so I have all this information out there, and so I'm getting emails, I'm getting requests from book clubs who want to chat with me. And the first thing I do is I log this information in a Google Docs spreadsheet. And this isn't just for book clubs, it's for all event requests. And luckily I started this early, so I have years and years and years, I have hundreds and hundreds of event requests tracked, which can be really useful. So this is just an example, and these are just the most recent book club requests that I've gotten. And I just put in the group and their name and the city and state, and I'll explain why that's important in a minute, and their email address, the date of inquiry. This column that says fiction ? Is only useful for me because for various reasons, I want to know if they're talking about my novels or my nonfiction. The main reason is those are two different publishers. So it helps me to be able to talk to my publishers differently about what's going on. And then in the notes field, if they're requesting a book club chat, I just always use the word Skype. Even if we're going to FaceTime, I use the word Skype, and I'll explain why in a minute. Otherwise, this notes field is just for whatever information I need to remember about who these people are and why they got in touch with me. So assuming it's a book club request and not an in-person event or whatever, the first thing I'm going to do is write them back and say yes and sort out the details. So for that, I also have a Google Doc, and I have basically a cut and paste email response. So I'm not redoing this, reinventing the wheel every time. If they've given me a date and time that works, great. I write them back and I say, yes, this works. Please write me back to confirm. I'll put it on my calendar. A lot of times they haven't given me a date. And so we have some back and forth, and I got to find out what time zone they're in. And we have to work out some more logistics. Maybe it's not going to be Skype, maybe it's FaceTime or something else. If it is Skype, I let them know how to use it. I've also recently added this. People, a lot of times they want to test the connection ahead of time, and it just made for double the number of appointments on my calendar. So I'm just right up saying, no, I'm not going to do that, but you don't really have to test it with me. You can test it with anybody. There's nothing specific to me that's going to tell you what you need to know. But I also always send them to my book club page in case they didn't already know about it. and I invite them to sign up for my email newsletter. I never add anyone to my email newsletter without their permission. I encourage them to sign up, but I am not going to put them on an email list. So I send all that out. It's a simple copy and paste. And then the reason that I keep all this information, I just want to get back to that for a second. I always save the email that they sent me. So I have a folder in Gmail just for these type of emails from book clubs. So I have every single email that they've ever sent me. And when I'm going out on book tour, this is something I just started doing a couple years ago. When I'm going out on book tour, let's say I'm going to be in Sacramento, California for book tour, I go through and I sort by maybe state. Well, first I sort by Skype to make sure I'm just dealing with my book club requests. And then I sort by state. And then I look for all the book clubs I've ever talked to in Sacramento or some of the surrounding cities. Now, this is time consuming and difficult because how do I know what the surrounding cities around Sacramento are? Like I know Davis is a city near Sacramento. So sometimes I have to like look at a map and go, well, I don't know, Springfield, Illinois. I honestly have no idea what other cities are near Springfield. So I go to a map and I look and I just sort of check within Illinois, are there any other cities? And when I'm coming to that town, if I'm coming to Springfield or I'm coming to Sacramento, I send personal emails to every book club and let them know that I'm coming. And that's why I save all those emails that they sent me so that I can go find the email and hit reply and say, hi, Peggy. Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm going to be in Sacramento next month. Here's the details. If the book club wants to come, I'd love to see you in person. And people love those emails because it's genuine. It really is a personal email. It's not a group email. It's not a BCC. It's not an email newsletter. I am personally writing to them. It takes a lot of time, but it's so hard to get turnout at events, and this actually works. And people write back and they're like, oh, thank you so much. And I'll tell them like, please tell your friends too. Like maybe people who aren't even in your book club would come, and people really do show up. So I'm actually happy to do that. All right, I'm going to just say a couple more things about what actually happens with the book club and then do questions. So that's all the tracking, and that's why I do all that tracking. I also noticed that, let me just mention, I also noticed that book clubs will engage on social media about that they're talking about my book. And so sometimes those are book clubs that I've spoken to, and they might take a picture where they gather around the computer screen and we all take a group picture together. And I see that on Instagram or Facebook or something, and I share it and say thank you. I always send a little follow-up email, usually just immediately after, as soon as I hang up from Skype, I send a little follow-up email. Thank you so much, stay in touch. Oh, I'm especially noticing on Instagram that people will tag the title of my book. So hashtag Girl Waits with Gun, hashtag Drunken Botanist. I follow those tags on Instagram so that they pop up in my Instagram feed, even if I don't follow that person. And if it's a book club that's reading the book, then I hit a little reply and say, hey, I have a lot of stuff on my website for book clubs if you want to know, or as long as it doesn't feel spammy or intrusive. I mean, I try to kind of be sensitive to that. But if I see on Facebook or Twitter or anything that a book club's reading my book, I will jump in where appropriate and kind of go, check out my website, or, you know, I do a lot of Skypes with book clubs or whatever. And I do hear from people because of that. Okay, last thing is in the meeting itself, because I know we had some questions here we're going to get to right now, but I know we had some questions about some things that happen in the book club meeting itself. So when I'm Skyping with a book club, I usually say a few words at the beginning, but I don't do a real presentation. So I'll say, hello, thank you for having me. Sometimes I literally don't remember what city they're in, so I'll ask them, like, remind me where you are in the country, and, you know, is it snowing there? Like, we have a little chit chat back and forth, and part of the reason for that is to get them used to talking to me through a computer screen, because some of them haven't done that before. And in fact, sometimes I'll say, like, do you guys do this a lot? Do you have a lot of Skype chats with book clubs or what? And they're like, no, you're our first one. And I always tell them how much I enjoy talking to book clubs, because, you know, when I'm out on book tour talking about a new book, I'm mostly trying to persuade people to read the book. And that's not fun for me. Like, that's not interesting to me. But when I can talk with people who've already read the book, we can have such a much better conversation about it. And since I'm writing a series, sometimes people actually give me really good ideas that I use in future books in the series. So I tell them how much I enjoy that, and I tell them that I'm here to answer their questions, and let's just jump right in. And people start asking me questions. Usually I will remind the group organizer to be prepared with a few questions in case everybody's really shy, but people have questions right off the bat. So we spend most of the time doing Q&A. These things are usually half an hour to an hour. To be honest, I sort of tell people half an hour, but if I'm having a good time, then I stay on the phone or on Skype with them as long as they want to. And I know a lot of authors ask about this, so I'll just tell you, it's rare for me to hear criticism of my book. People are incredibly polite in front of me. The few times anyone has asked me a question that seemed to imply some sort of criticism, I just kind of ignore it. So I can remember one time where somebody said something like, I noticed that the pace really slowed down in the middle of the book. Is that intentional? Is that some sort of literary style? And I just sort of acted a little confused and just sort of said, oh, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. I felt like it moved right along. Next question. So, I mean, I just sort of act a little clueless and keep going. But I have to tell you, nobody really ever asks weird, grumpy, inappropriate questions. It just doesn't happen. And they don't do their book discussion in front of me. They do that before or after. I think one time somebody started reading the discussion guide questions out loud to me. And I just sort of interrupted and said, oh, are those the questions my publisher sends out? Yeah, let's not do those. Let's just talk about the books. You know, let's set those aside. And I think she was a little surprised. I think she thought that was her job, but she was like a intern at the library or something. I think she just didn't understand how it worked. So yeah, very rarely is there anything remotely weird or inappropriate in all of this. They're generally incredibly kind, cheerful, wonderful people, and I'm happy to talk to them. And a thing that I do at the end is, and this is important, I always make sure there's a moment for this, and it's on top of my mind, is I thank them very much. I encourage them to please tell their friends. If you enjoyed the book, please tell your friends. If you ever read any of the other books, please call me up. I would love to talk with you about the next one too. I tell them, you know, if maybe they're near Chicago and I say, you know, I get to Chicago every year or two. I would love to see you in person. So I send out a newsletter. I put the events on my website. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. However you want to find me, I am out there. Please stay in touch with me and maybe we can meet up next time in person. And everyone's very happy to hear that. And they have also heard about my newsletter and stuff, which is what I want them to know about. So that's like my little spiel at the end. But mostly it's about encouraging people to tell their friends. And I say that to them with a lot of sincerity and a lot of emphasis because them telling their friends is super important. Okay, so I've got a list of questions here that were submitted before we started. And I deliberately answered some of them in what I was just talking about, but I'm just going to look for a few others that maybe haven't already been answered. What are some of the book-related or authoring topics you've discussed at book club? So I really steer clear of preparing a topic. And in fact, I'm glad you asked this question because I do get requests from book clubs and from other groups to do more of a presentation to them. And those presentations take preparation time. Just like today, I spent time putting all this together to talk to you guys. And for book clubs, you know, I do a lot of these chats. I do them for free. And I'm not willing to put in the preparation time. So I very politely tell people that what I offer is a Q&A with people who've already read the book. And if that's them, then great, let's do that. But anything else is just not something I do. That's my own personal, you might have a different idea about that, which is totally fine. What kind of books work best for book clubs? You know, the cool thing is there's really book clubs for everything. Obviously, I would say that in a broad sense, book clubs are primarily women. It's primarily interesting, I think, for women to have a book that in some way connects with their life. and that lets them talk about what's going on in their own lives. For instance, with my books, they take place in the 1910s, but it really makes women want to talk about their grandmothers and some of the family stories that they've heard. So it's that personal connection. But there's so many different kinds of book clubs. There's nonfiction book clubs, there's science book clubs, there's legal thriller book clubs. So, you know, well, there's a lot of different things. Is FaceTime an equally convenient medium as Skype? Yes, absolutely. If somebody would rather FaceTime than Skype, I'm happy to do that. I have both. Let's see, there were a couple of others. Oh, and then also virtual book clubs. So let me just say this. What I've mostly been talking about is me Skyping in with a group of people who are sitting around in person together. Right now, none of us are doing that. So I have been doing some book clubs on Zoom where somebody in the book club gets the Zoom thing set up and they send me the link and I do that. But there's other types of virtual book clubs, including Facebook groups that choose, or Goodreads groups that choose a book and read it. And again, they usually reach out to me and I pop into their group and answer questions or whatever. I'm usually not reaching out to them, but I think it's probably possible to do that. And then the other thing, there's a question about in-person book clubs. Rarely do I go to someone's house and do an in-person book club. You know, that's a lot more time for me to get there and back, and I gotta sort of think about whatever, being dressed appropriately, and I don't know. It's not just me at home in a t-shirt. And it's a little bit more of an awkward situation because of course they're wanting to have their personal chit chat and I'm the guest, and I don't know, it's a bit much. I have from time to time gotten together like in a coffee shop with a book club when I'm in town, maybe to do an event, like, hey, let's meet up an hour before my event. I would love to see you guys, that kind of thing. But then everyone has come together to like do this thing, and it's a little different than sort of just going to somebody's house. So that's my personal preference, but I think that's how I've handled it. I think I've covered most of the questions already that I'm seeing here. So let's jump in and see if there's any other questions that have come in the meantime.
Absolutely, we've got plenty of questions coming in.
Oh wait, let me just do one. I'm sorry, there was one at the bottom that I didn't scroll down all the way to. That's a good one, which is how do you sign books or promote book sales with online book clubs? So whether it's an online book club or an in-person book club that you're Skyping into, there are things you can do. So I usually don't do this unless people ask, but I'm happy to do it. I have book plates that are essentially just a book plate is just a sticker that maybe has your name on it or your book cover. It's got something on it, and you sign the book plates and stick them in an envelope and send them off. And I'm always happy to do that. And I'm happy to inscribe them to everybody if that's what they want. And in terms of promoting book sales, with book clubs, they've generally already bought the book. But for some reason, if they haven't, maybe they're going to be meeting in 3 months, then if you have a way to sell books online that are signed, then do that. And for most authors, the most convenient way to do that is to have a partnership with a local bookstore where you say, hey, can I send my readers over to you to order signed books? And I will pop into the bookstore as often as you need me to keep you stocked up with signed copies. And then depending on how convenient this is for you to do, you could even go down to the bookstore to inscribe copies. If someone says, would you please write happy birthday, or would you please write to Margaret? That depends on your schedule and how maybe close you live to the bookstore. In my case, my husband and I for many years owned a bookstore, so it was ridiculously convenient for me to send people there to order signed copies. And you might, as an author, sell your own books online, in which case, of course, you could encourage people to do that as well. But generally, the book clubs have already bought them, so it's kind of not as much of a thing. Okay, what else have we got?
Great. Well, on that note, Allison asked if publishers offer volume discounts to book clubs.
No, generally publishers do not. Ordering books from publishers at any sort of discount generally requires that you be set up as an account with them. You have to fill out a credit application. They make it kind of difficult. So the short answer is no for big publishers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another question regarding financials. Do you ever charge to do virtual chats?
I don't charge to talk to book clubs. There have certainly been times in the past where I've done some kind of presentation or talk where the group has offered, they've said, we have a couple $100 stipend for this. And I've said, great, I'll take it. But I've not had any desire to try to turn this into a money-making thing. Book clubs are not really prepared to pay authors. And the other ways that you can make money by giving talks online just are not interesting to me personally, so I haven't gone after it. But I certainly think, depending on the type of book you've written and what you're an expert in, there's probably all kinds of ways to charge money for you giving online presentations. But it's not something I think about with book clubs.
Okay. Sayer asked, have you tried Authograph for signing digital copies?
No, I never have. I know that this is a thing that you can do a digital signature for people's ebooks, and I'm sorry, I've never tried it. No.
Okay. Let's see. Talia asked, besides shelf awareness, if you would recommend any other websites for advertising.
So the promotional things that we've done, shelf awareness for readers has been by far the most successful. Reading group guides is probably almost tied for most successful. They have various promotional packages available, and those have been great. I'm pretty sure we did something with Library Journal at one time that went pretty well. Obviously, that's going to reach libraries exclusively, but I'm happy with that. So those, I think, are the big ones right now. I don't think Book Movement, it's a great website and a great app, but I don't know that they offer paid promotional opportunities. That could have changed. Last time I checked, I don't think that they did. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the big ones.
Archer asked, when you're using a site like readinggroupguides.com, what's the next step? Who do you reach out to?
Well, so most of these book club websites, they might already have your book listed on the site if they're just pulling data in from your publisher's data feed, which goes it goes to Ingram, it goes to various places, and they can pull that data and have your book cover and title and some details. So they might already have it. Otherwise, it's generally up to publishers to submit all the information. And I have gone to these sites and looked at my books and noticed that things are missing, and my publisher's great about getting on this stuff, and I can say, hey, I noticed they don't have the discussion book for the third book in the series, and I notice you're missing a description here, and sometimes these things are catch as catch can, and they're done by an intern, and you sort of got to stay on top of it. But generally, publishers are the ones who are loading that information into the back end. There may be a way for authors to submit directly, and I should have looked before we started, and I didn't, so I apologize for that. But I'm sure it's easy to poke around on the site and see what the different ways are to submit all that information.
Okay. Michelle asks, do you know what the range of prices is for promoting?
I don't. I wish I did. It's a little maddening. Not sometimes, every year I have a meeting with my publisher and we talk about ideas for promoting the next book, and I'll sort of say, well, I think this idea would be a better use of our money than this other idea, but I don't know how much anything costs, so I'm not really sure. And they never volunteer to tell me how much anything costs. So I'm completely in the dark on what everything costs and which things are which give you the best return on your investment. I wish I did know more about that.
Yeah, that's my experience. It's a contact us for a quote kind of situation, yes. not a price sheet.
Right.
Lee says she has a novel coming out on June 30th. Do you have any tips, any extra tips for promoting the book clubs while timing it around a launch?
No. I actually think the nice thing about book clubs is that it's not tied to a launch. And I'm really glad you asked that, because this is something that publishers forget about. They're very much geared toward the first few weeks after publication. And I think they forget that books have a much longer life, especially with book clubs. My experience with book clubs is it takes them a while to hear about a book. They've scheduled out some number of months in advance anyway, so they're not jumping on the new hot book the minute it comes out. A lot of book clubs wait for the paperback. They have a strict no hardcover rule, so that could easily be a year later that they're going to do that book anyway. So I think the nice thing is you do have a lot of time, and you will have book clubs years from now just getting hip to your book, which is wonderful. It really gives it this much longer life.
That's great. Yeah, somebody asked if you see an increase in sales from doing it.
Well, I mean, it's,
I guess beyond the club itself.
Right, right. So, it's hard for me to know what to attribute any fluctuation in sales to. Of course, we as authors, we have access to our book scan data through Amazon, but we don't necessarily have access to books not sold on BookScan, or just ebooks or audiobooks. So we get such a small piece of the picture. But what I can tell you, what I was talking about earlier with bookstores that do these big book club nights and roll out their book club picks, is that they see big upticks in the sale of any titles that they introduce on book club night throughout the year, and well beyond the number of books they would expect to sell to a book club. Because again, I think those book club members are telling their friends, and they usually keep a display in their bookstore of, here's our book club, here's what our book clubs are reading right now. And other people who aren't in a book club are still interested in what the book clubs are reading. So I think that, even though that's only within bookstores, is probably a good signal of what happens. And I certainly know among my own friends that they will be very forthcoming with me about a book they read at book club that they really liked. Like, that comes up a lot. So I think the word of mouth does generate book sales, but as with everything book sale related, it is like impossible to quantify number of sales we get.
Okay. Now, we received more than several questions about book clubs for nonfiction books.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned, it's generally more towards fiction. Several people said they're nonfiction writers. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's probably some outreach that you can do to associations or groups that are connected with your topic. So my books were all in the natural sciences world, mostly botanical, horticultural. So there are large garden clubs that have a book club affiliated with it. So the garden club could have 300 members, but they also have a book club that meets that has 10 or 20 members in it. A botanical garden might run a book club, a science museum might run a book club, a plant society, a horticulture society. So where they are reading books on those topics. And for me as a writer, I'm already in touch with those groups because I'm out there traveling, doing speaking engagements with them. Maybe I'm writing for their publications as a freelancer. So I'm in other words, I am in the world that my books are in to some extent. So it's easier for me to kind of put the word out like, oh, hey, and if you guys have a book club, there's a horticulture library in Seattle and they run a book club. But I know them because I've used the library for research, and I've given a talk there, and we're connected on Facebook and chat. So it's about sort of being embedded in the world that your books are embedded in. And book club requests can come from that. But I would really, if you have a book club page on your website, really kind of look at optimizing that page in terms of keyword stuff for nonfiction book club, science book club, like make sure those kind of keywords are on the back end so that maybe if people are just searching for good books for a science book club, you'll come up in the first few pages of search results.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we've had a few people ask about books that are more than a few years old. Do you have any specific tips for pushing those out?
I don't really think there's an expiration date. I'm really surprised at how often book clubs are reading, not just my books, like they're usually reading the first book in my series, which came out in 2015. So it's now a 5-year-old book. But I'm surprised at how often I hear about friends in book clubs who are reading books that have been out 5 and 10 years. So, for me, what that would look like is I would certainly be putting it out in my newsletter, putting it up on social media from time to time, making sure I had a good web page. If you're still working with that publisher, letting them know like, hey, I think this is still a really good book for book clubs. And are there things we can do even though the book's been out for a while? I really want to look at my whole backlist and kind of optimize hate to use a word like optimize, but anyway, you know, to just sort of maximize the potential of all of my books for book clubs. And is there a way? And sometimes my editor or whoever will say, yeah, you know, we're doing this new thing with book clubs, and we have been talking about going back and doing some of our backlists. So let me push that along a little bit. So yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a deadline on a timeline on book club stuff.
Okay. I think we've got time for just a few more questions.
Okay,
a couple of people asked about doing book clubs with multiple participants, either the author and subjects interviewed, or multiple authors with books on a common theme. Have you had that experience?
No, I haven't. I haven't done multiple authors with one book club. It's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And have you seen an impact right now with the quarantining? Are you busier than normal? Are you seeing increased interest in virtual book clubs?
No, my experience so far has been that my book club people seem to be struggling to figure this out, or they're just not interested. So I had a bunch of book clubs kind of cancel on me when this whole thing started, and they were just like, we're just going to put this on a back burner and we'll get back in touch later. I have had a few. Usually what it takes one book club member who like has a job where they have to use Zoom a lot, and so they're used to it, and they can talk the other members into using it. But I think for people who are older or just not used to the technology, or the shutdown is stressful and hard for them, and they just don't want anything on their calendar, anything new to figure out. So it has been a lot slower, but I'm probably doing, one a week or so. And it's those groups that have figured it out, and they're usually happy to see one another. I usually have to sit through a lot more chit chat about husbands and kids and stuff, because they haven't seen each other for weeks. And so we have to do all that and laugh about how weird our hair is all looking before we get into the book club stuff. But that's cool.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Sally joined late and asked if this will be available to watch later. Yes, it will. We'll send out a link tomorrow, I believe. And a few people have asked about kids book clubs. If you have tips for, I guess you haven't written kids books.
Yeah, sorry, I got nothing for you there. I mean, I have friends who are children's authors, and I know that they're working a lot with libraries and schools and book clubs in that context, but I've never done it myself. So yeah, I don't know.
All right. If anybody has any last minute questions, you can try to use that Q&A thing down at the bottom now. Linda just asked if you've ever given, she'd like to give an ebook away for a book club. Have you found book clubs interested in that?
I don't know. I don't have a way to give away copies of my ebooks. I think if you're self-publishing, it's easier. But with my publisher, there's really no way to give away ebooks, which is absurd, but true. So, but I do give away physical copies of my books, so much so that I've run out of author's copies and asked my publisher to send me more just for giveaways. And this is a great thing to do if you can get your publisher to turn loose of any remaindered or hurt copies that are otherwise going to be dumped for $1 or $2. It's great to use those for promotions if you can get hold of them. And so I do a lot of giveaway type things that way. I have a thing in my newsletter where if you ask me a question and I pick your question, I send you the book of your choice. So I say, here are all the books you can pick from. Now ask me questions. And so I pick a question and I answer that in the next newsletter, and I give that book away. Those people aren't always book club members, but it's just an example of kind of a way to do that.
Okay. Kathleen asked, she'd like to see that form letter response. Is that on your website?
Oh, no.
Oh, of course it wouldn't be. Yeah.
No, because it's a copy and paste thing. I mean, I can go back to share screen for just
well, that's okay. Kathleen, you can look at it on YouTube and just pause it.
Oh, that's true. That's
true.
Don't
yeah. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for today. Amy Stewart, thank you so much for joining the Authors Guild Foundation for another webinar. And thanks to everyone who joined us. Again, you'll all get an email with a survey to telling us how we did, what you'd like to see in the future. We'd really appreciate it if you fill that out. And you'll get a link to watch this on YouTube again. So Amy, thank you so much.
Thanks. This was great. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.